Let's see how AASB S2 comes live in the real world. In this section, we'll dive into practical case studies and real company disclosures, showing how exactly the standard is applied, what good looks like, and what lessons you can take back to your own work. Let's turn theory into action together.
Let's look at a case study of one financial institution which is starting to align its climate disclosure with expectation of ASB S2. On the metrics and target fronts, they have reported both Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions from their own operations like building and data centers, and taken the critical step of disclosing Step 3 emissions, specifically from their finance activities, including home loans, business lending, and project finance. That's where the bulk of climate exposure lies for banks. In terms of strategy, they have conducted scenario analysis under both 1.5-degree and 3-degree warming path to understand how different climate futures might affect their business models and loan book. Looking at the governance, climate risk is now embedded in the board's risk committee oversight and the bank's net zero lending pathway, which has been approved by executive leadership, showing that climate action is not driven, it is now being driven from the top. Some of the key actions include setting a net zero by 2050 target for their lending portfolio, publishing their financed emission methodology, and beginning to stress test their mortgage book against physical climate risk, such as floods. Together, all of these steps show how an institution can use ASBS to move beyond generic commitments and deliver structured, investor ready climate disclosures. Microsoft offers a strong example of how large tech companies are starting to embed ASBS2 principles into their climate related disclosures. Starting with metrics and targets, they have disclosed Scope 1 and 2 emissions from their offices, data center, and overall global energy use. But they have also gone deeper into Scope 3 emissions, covering supply chain activities, product use, employee commuting, and even their investment footprints. This kind of transparency is essential to show the full picture of climate impact. Under scenario analysis, they assessed climate risk to their data center operations and energy sourcing, identifying vulnerabilities in future climate conditions that could affect uptime, power cost, and resiliency. On the governance side, sustainability is overseen by independent board committee and executive compensation is linked directly to carbon reduction outcomes. That's a clear signal of leadership accountability. Strategically, they have made some bold moves. A public commitment to become carbon negative by 2030, an internal carbon tax applied across business units to drive behavioral change, and supplier scorecards to improve performance on Scope 3 emissions, showing that climate accountability extends beyond their own operations. Together, these steps illustrate how ASBS2 can help companies create a structured, forward-looking climate strategy that is backed by governance, performance metrics, and risk analysis investors can trust. Let's look at how a major mining company called Rio Tinto is approaching climate disclosure in line with ASBS2. Starting with metrics and targets, they have disclosed Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions from mining operations, smelters, and diesel usage, critical emission sources in heavy industries. They have also reported Scope 3 emissions from the downstream use of their products like iron ore and aluminum by customers. This helps investors understand the full life cycle of their value chain. In terms of strategy and risk management, the company conducted scenario analysis across 1.5-degree and 2.5-degree warming scenarios. This analysis looked at both climate risk and commodity market shift, helping them assessing how future climate conditions could impact demand, production, and operations. They have gone a step further by embedding these scenarios into the capital expenditure decisions, ensuring that long-term investments are aligned with climate resilience. On the governance side, their climate strategy has been approved by shareholders, signaling clear external accountability. They have also tied executive plans to their decarbonization roadmap, creating internal alignment and performance-based accountability at the highest level. Their forward-looking actions include net zero by 2050, targets for Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions, and bold investments in hydrogen, electric whole trucks, and green aluminum. Technologies that will drive decarbonization in one of the most emission-intensive sectors. These cases show how even resource-heavy industries can integrate climate risk into governance, strategy, investment, and measurements, and use ASBS2 to do it in a transparent and structured way. Thanks for joining us on this journey through ASBS2, Australia's climate disclosure standard built for a new era of transparency, accountability, and action. By now, you have seen how the standard brings structure to climate reporting through governance, strategy, risk management, and metrics. More importantly, you have seen how organizations are beginning to respond with credible disclosures, scenario plannings, and measurable targets. Remember, this is not just about compliance, it's about preparing your organization for a low carbon future and building trust with investors, regulators, and communities. If you are just getting started, focus on what matters most to your business. Take one step at a time and keep the conversation going. Thank you again, and here's to more confident, consistent, and climate ready reporting.